Hey y'all, and welcome to Bradley the Singing Chef. It is the month of May, and for me that means Kentucky Derby time. And if the Kentucky Derby is happening, I have to have one of my favorite desserts, and that is Derby pie. You are going to love this dessert. It is a go-to for me that's really simple to throw together, but has a power punch of flavor from some chocolate and pecans and a little bit of bourbon. So let's get going. All right, first thing I've got, I have my stand mixer here, and I have three things that I've made sure that I've gotten to room temperature before I begin. One is just a frozen deep dish pie crust, okay? I'm not gonna make the pastry today. This is a quick go-to with a frozen pie crust. I've just let it come to room temperature so that it's nice and thawed. The other two things that I brought to room temperature are 3 eggs and a stick and a half of butter. So you want to make sure you get those out a little bit ahead of time so they are ready to go. I have my stand mixer here, and in that mixer I'm going to first put the stick and a half of room temperature salted butter. I like using salted butter in this recipe because the salt cuts through a little bit of the sweetness, and you get that sort of salty sweet thing going on within this pie. So there's the first stick. In you go. Don't want to leave any behind. Then half a stick. So there you go. 3/4 of a cup or stick and a half of butter into your stand mixer. To this, I'm going to add a cup and a half of granulated sugar. There we go, cup and a half. Then I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour. The flour is going to help this filling kind of thicken in the pie. There we go. 1/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour. That beeping means that my oven has preheated. You're going to want to preheat your oven to only 275 degrees. This is a slow cooking pie, but it makes it the perfect ooey gooey texture in the middle. It's kind of like we're taking a pecan pie and we're throwing in a jolt from the bourbon and a big flavor boost from the chocolate chips that we are going to add. Okay, I'm going to get my stand mixer going with this butter, sugar, and flour, so that it creams all of that together until it's nice and fluffy. That's going to take a couple of minutes. I'm going to let this go, and I'll be right back. Okay, everything is nice and blended. I'm just going to take a spoon and scrape down the sides of my bowl to make sure everything gets down in there. Go. One more little blend. Then I have my 3 room temperature eggs. I use extra large eggs when I'm cooking. Most recipes call for a large egg, but I like using the extra large ones. I just think that you get a little more bang for your buck, for one thing. And I've never had any problems with it, like ruining a recipe to go from large to extra large. I just think you get a little bit more action out of your eggs, whether you're trying to use it to help rise the sponge of a cake, or whether you just need it to help glue things together in a batter like cookies or like a pie. I'm gonna just beat these with a fork, poking through the yolks to get them going, and then just pretend you're making scrambled eggs. Get those nice and beaten together. There we go. Then that goes right in with the butter, sugar, and flour mixture. All of that out of my bowl. And give it another mix. Oh yeah, now we're talking. Oh, Oh, yeah. It's going to become like a pale yellow color, and that's exactly what you want. All right. That is it for the action of the stand mixer. The rest of this, we are just going to stir in. Now, the reason the Derby pie is called a Derby pie, like I said, has to do with the Kentucky Derby, because bourbon as an ingredient, true bourbon, is really only made in Kentucky. So we are going to give this a jolt of flavor with that bourbon in this beautiful chocolatey pecan pie mixture. But if you are not a bourbon drinker, or you don't have bourbon on hand and you don't want to buy a bottle just for the sake of a few tablespoons, you could certainly use vanilla extract instead, if you have that on hand, and that would work perfectly fine. It just wouldn't be a Derby pie, it would just become a chocolate pecan pie. The bourbon really is what makes it that Derby pie. Okay, so I have 1.5 tablespoons of Kentucky bourbon that is going to go into the mix. I'm also going to put in just a splash of vanilla, tiniest little bit of vanilla, because I still like a little bit of vanilla flavor in this pie. Okay, now let's talk pecans and chocolate chips. For me, if I'm going to put a nut in a bread or in any kind of a dessert, it's almost always going to be pecans because it's my favorite. I think it's because I grew up in North Georgia where pecans were plentiful. In fact, I was in the Chattanooga Boys Choir, and our fundraiser every year was selling pounds of Georgia pecans. So that's why I'm choosing pecans today. You could certainly use walnuts if that is your preference, but pecans is mine. So to the bowl, I am going to add 1 3/4 cup of chopped pecans. They don't have to be like perfectly chopped. Like they just need to be broken down a little bit so that they will, rise within the pie a little bit. That goes in the bowl along with 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. I'm using semi-sweet chocolate chips today. If you wanted to use dark, you certainly could, bittersweet chocolate. But semi-sweet is the way that I usually go with this pie. It's just kind of a middle-of-the-road chocolate that everybody's gonna like. So, like I said, 1.5 cups of chocolate chips goes into the mix. And from there, everything gets mixed by hand, okay? You just wanna stir down all of the stuff from your batter that's on the sides and incorporate the bourbon, the chocolate chips, and the pecans all the way through that pie mixture that we made. Oh my goodness. It's really hard to not be tempted to just eat this the way that it is. All right, everything is nice and incorporated. Now, I have this frozen pie crust that I have thawed out. Now, this, because of all the eggs that are in it, is gonna rise a little bit in this pie crust. If you have too much mixture, don't go too high because it's gonna raise a little bit and you don't want it to overflow all over your oven. I usually put my pie, once it's filled, on top of a sheet tray so that just in case it might catch it in the pan and not get all over my oven, then I'll have to clean my oven. So let's see how we do with this batch. Into the pie crust with the majority of this. And then I'm just gonna mash it down into the pie crust. Pretty good. It can probably take another scoop. You could certainly divide this into a couple of pie crusts and make flatter pies if you wanted to. That would be perfectly fine. So I wound up with like, I don't know, a cup left over. It might take one more dollop right there in the middle. I don't want to waste any if I can keep from it. So yeah, I think that's gonna be okay. I only have like maybe, I don't know, a half a cup of mixture still left in the bowl. So that's not too much waste. But like I said, you don't want to fill it so high that it's gonna overflow, because this is gonna sink down and then bubble right back up as it bakes. We're gonna put this into the 275-degree oven, and it's gonna bake for, excuse me, for at least 90 minutes. At the 90-minute mark, get some pot holders and give it a little bit of a shake, a little bit of a jiggle. And if it's still liquidy and it hasn't set yet, leave it in for another, I don't know, 10 minutes. Check it again. You want it to be not gelatinous at all in the middle. You want it to be set. So make sure you get it to that point. Start at 90 minutes and then go up by 10-minute increments until you get it cooked the way that you want it to be. I'm gonna pop this in the oven and I'll be back in just a few. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Bradley the Singing Chef. My pie has come out of the oven. I left it in for 90 minutes. I checked it, was still a little bit jiggly in the middle, and I left it in for another 5 minutes, and it was good to go. The top was a little crackled on the top. That's not gonna make it taste any different, so don't stress if that happens to yours. And it did really rise up out of the pan quite a bit, so I was glad that I had that sheet tray underneath it to catch any overflow. There was very little, but anyway, just that's a great safety precaution as you put your pie in the oven. So, I'm gonna slice up a piece, see how we did. It's always nerve-wracking to take the first slice out of any pie. Oh, yeah. Guys, we did so good. Look at this goodness. All of the chocolate and pecan beauty. Yes, 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 yes. Well, it would be rude for me to not try it, right? Going in. Oh my goodness. Oh, yeah. Yes, Lord. That is so good. I mean, so much chocolatey flavor, beautiful pecans for some crunch, and that little hit of the bourbon that's in there. It's perfect. It's everything I want in a piece of pie, if we're honest. And so I really hope that you will give Derby pie a try. That's hard to say. Hope you'll give this recipe a shot and see how it does for you too. On Derby Day or any other day, this is a dessert that you are going to want again and again and again. Thank you so much for joining me on Bradley the Singing Chef. Would love for you to like, subscribe, and share these videos with your friends on my YouTube channel. That would be fantastic. I hope that you will always enjoy a good Derby pie on any day, whether it's Derby Day or not. Eat well, love always, and bon appetit, y'all.